It is the first of our live Q&A sessions, and you might have seen a few of my Huw Meets series, but this is the first one, as Martin Tyler would say, that's gone live. So, hi Rikki.
Huw, how are you?
Thank you, very good, yeah. So, tell the readers, or the viewers rather, that you're at King Edward's, Whitley, aren't you, in Surrey? You're a school teacher now, aren't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a school teacher, but head of cricket and mainly involved with a lot of the sport here at school. And we're in our very nice Bridewell room currently. So got a very nice bookcase behind me, which I don't think has ever been really fitting with my personality. But yeah, it's good to be here.
You've read a few books in your time, Rikki, haven't you?
Audio ones, I get the audio books now.
You haven't done an autobiography, or?
No, potentially in the pipeline. Yeah, something that potentially going to look to further down the line. But at the moment, just concentrating on the cricket side of it.
They could probably use the transcript from this, to be honest, because we're here for an hour, and I've got lots of questions from our viewers, readers. I've also got my own questions, so hopefully we'll keep it going for an hour, and that'll make the stuff for your book, I reckon. But we'll start off at the very beginning. I'm going to ask you about your childhood and how you got into cricket.
So from a very young age, I think it's about 4 years of age, I always had a bat in my hand, always up at the local cricket club. And the way it sort of worked for me was it's actually gone full circle. So I'm at King Edward's Whitley now as the head of cricket, but my journey sort of started as an under-9 for Surrey particularly, in our sports hall, where there was like a Nescafe course. I think they were sponsored at the time for Surrey. There was a 10-week course, and the winner, sort of the chosen player of that course, got a trial for Surrey under-9s. I was lucky enough to win that, got into a trial for Surrey under-9s, got picked, and then obviously sort of progressed from there through the age groups, and that sort of started here at King Edward's Whitley, funny enough. And then now, after retiring from cricket, I'm back here as head of cricket.
Any teachers still there from your days, or has it all changed?
No, so it was just a hiring of the venue. Yeah, so it was every Sunday morning, a couple of hours. I think it's a 10-week course. And
did you win some coffee as well?
I didn't. No, I got a little sort of plaque thing with a signed cricket bat. Right. It was actually Alex Stewart who managed to go up to the Oval, and he presented me with the plaque and the cricket bat during one lunchtime. The gaffer during one of their fixtures. So it's quite nice.
Very nice. Well, you had a dream start at Surrey, didn't you? One that you were second 11 champions, Surrey, the county, weren't you?
Yeah, so we had a really, really good side. You're looking back then, like the likes of Michael Carberry was in that side, Gareth Batty. We also had Tim Murtagh and a few other great players, that really probably should have been playing first team cricket at potentially other counties. But how strong we were as a county, that made our second 11 a lot stronger as well. So it was quite nice to sort of have that group of players to learn from as well.
Well, Tim Murtagh did eventually break in, didn't he? Was it a bit of a shock when he went to Middlesex, or was that because he wasn't getting the opportunities he wanted?
I think it was a shock, but I think it potentially down to opportunity, similar to Michael Carberry a little bit. Fantastic cricketer, but it was just the places that we didn't really need a seamer at the time. We didn't need an opening batter in their cases, but fantastic cricketers, and obviously they went on and did fantastic stuff at other counties. Unfortunately, not at Surrey.
No, well, I mean, you had such a good squad, as you said. So you came into the first 11 dressing room with the likes of Ian Ward, Ali Brown, Alex Stewart, Graham Thorpe, Mark Ramprakash, Adam Hollyoak. And the attack was Alex Tudor, Sack Lane, Mushtaq, Martin Bicknell, and Ian Salisbury. So daunting, I guess.
It was a little bit, but I'm not just saying it. It was a dressing that really sort of, as a young player coming into it, they really sort of helped me and made that sort of transition into the professional game so easy. I know there was a couple of times we had scenarios where international players are being left out of the first 11, which is obviously going to put you in a really good position to win games of cricket if you've got internationals being left out. But just for me as a youngster going into that dressing room, they made it very easy for me.
Yeah, definitely. So you slotted in to sort of an all-rounder slot there, didn't you? What was it like to start with? Did you get, what was your debut? Do you remember your debut at all?
Well, the actual first class debut was it was at Fenners against Cambridge Uni. So I managed to get 100 on debut. I think it was 107 not out. I think I can't even remember if I bowled or not. I didn't really do a lot of bowling back then, so I was sort of in the twos. I bowled as well, but when I got into that sort of first 11, because of the bowling attack and the lineup we had, I was more seen as like a batter who could bowl a bit if need be, and I was always sort of used as a strike bowler. When I was younger, I had a little bit of pace, so I was up there sort of with that early sort of 90 mile an hour, and sort of used as a strike bowler. And then obviously down the line, I sort of eased off on the pace and focused on control. But yeah, it was at Fenners. And then my actual championship debut, I'm pretty sure it was at Lancashire. I think I got 40 odd there, and a certain Jimmy Anderson was playing as well. And it used to be when at Old Trafford, when the square was the other way around. So you could literally see how far the slips and the keeper were back, because not many people knew much about Jimmy at that stage. But I remember him bowling a couple of balls, and we sort of all looked at each other and I was like, right, he's got pace. So it was,
he had daunting pace, did he? Back
Jimmy did back then, yeah, he did. He was very quick, and obviously moved the ball. But similar again, sort of as he got a little bit older, he worked on those skills a little bit more. And obviously, as the body gets a bit older, you're going to come down in pace. But yeah, that was sort of similar with me, that I was sort of used as a strike bowler. Jimmy was an out-and-out bowler, but I was used as a strike bowler a lot of the time, because we had the likes of Martin Bicknell, Jimmy Orman as a Mahmood, Ed Giddins, Murray Akram a little bit further down the line as well. And then you got Zach Lane and Ian Salisbury and stuff. So I didn't really get the ball too often. It was more sort of plan C. If they hadn't got the wickets, I had to try and make something happen.
Yeah, your memory's good. So I'm just looking it up on our sister website, Cricket Archive. You got 41 and bowled 5 overs. I won't say the figures, a little expensive, but yeah, in a drawn match. Actually, I was wondering whether it was one of the games I covered, because I used to work for the Telegraph and I got them to do some games. But yeah, and I remember going up to Old Trafford for a Surrey game, but I don't think it was that year. But so you say, what was it like playing under Adam Hollioake? I imagine he was a sort of brilliant captain. I think he was quite a sort of formidable player to come up against, wasn't he, or captain to come up against?
Well, I think, you talk about captains of leaders. He was a fantastic leader, and he was someone who, you probably hear this term a lot, but you would have run through a brick wall for him, because he would have told you that it would be okay. And that's the sort of leader he was, and captain. Very good in getting the best out of his players, was honest and open, which I've always been a big believer that if you can be honest and open to people, they sort of know where they stand, and there's no sort of like tiptoeing around those scenarios. So that helped me definitely. And also it sort of worked with the partnership with Keith Medlicott as well. Sometimes Adam would be sort of very to the point, and then Meadows would be the, arm around the shoulder, don't worry, keep going type thing, which is, sort of good cop, bad cop, but it worked fantastically well. Obviously it helped having the players you had in that Surrey dressing room to win trophies, but at the same point, a strong leader and someone who you'd sort of, as I said, run through a brick wall for. It was quite handy to have. Keith
Medlicott is one of the masters in charge of cricket at one of the schools, isn't he? Do you come up against him on the circuit?
He's at Reed, so I haven't. The only time I've seen him was So I saw him a couple of months back, I think, at the Oval. So I was doing some BBC commentary, and I just popped in to see the gaffer and stuff, to see how things were, and he was in there, so we caught up, and he's still his bubbly self. And he was someone as a coach for me at that time of my career, coming into that dressing room. As I said, the players made me feel very welcome, but he made it very easy. It was always, just go and be yourself. The reason you're here is because of what you've done. Just continue to do it, and sort of take that pressure off young shoulders. So, it was quite enjoyable playing under him, and then obviously with Adam as a captain.
Well, let's bring in one of the readers' / viewers' questions at this stage. So you said, Keith Medlicott said, be yourself. So David Morse asks, I've just finished listening to Huw Turbervill's podcast with Richard Hadley. It's a bit of a plug for my podcast. Anyway, one of the greatest all-rounders. England have had some greats, and you were in the mix. How did you end up becoming an all-rounder? And how can you be good at it? How can you be a good all-rounder? David goes on to say.
I think it's a situation that the love of cricket. I had a massive love for cricket, and I just wanted to be involved in the game all the time. We alluded to at the start, how did I get into cricket? From the age of 4, I was always at a cricket club. It was pretty much 7 days a week. I had a bat in my hand, I had a ball in my hand. I used to annoy all the club cricketers, and they'd finish their club matches, and all they want to do is go into the bar afterwards and have a drink. And I would like, come and hit me some catches, and they'd take it in turns, and I was fielding and getting in the net. So it was always a case of I just wanted to do everything and be involved in the game. And as my sort of career went on, it was always a focus that to be in the game, you needed to make sure you were batting high up the order. So I had to really focus on my batting. And then to be in the game, you need to make sure you're getting an opportunity to bowl the overs. And then also the fielding positions, it was always a case of I want to be where the ball's going to go the most, So I was always sort of backward point. If it was going towards the back end of an innings, I wanted to be at long on and cow corner because, I wanted to be getting in the game as much as possible. So to be a good all-rounder is basically hard work and work on every aspect of your game.
Your third championship match, 153 not out at Taunton. Pretty. Yeah. I mean, what must have been an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. It was one of those sort of starts that no one really knew me. People talk about like people bursting on the scene and stuff. I got the opportunity. I was in good form, I think, from a couple of games in the twos anyway. So I think I got 100 in the twos down at Hastings, I think, as well. So I was in that sort of form. Went to Old Trafford. Feel I did okay in that debut match. I'd obviously had the 100 at the Fenners, and then you go down to Taunton, which at the time back then was the flattest wicket you're ever likely to see. Quick outfield. If you got it across the square, it would run away. I think Rampton was already on his way to 200, so we had a bit of a partnership. Runs were being scored quite freely, and it was just an opportunity for me to just play normally, really. And as I said, when you have the sort of backing of the players and your coach to go and do what you want to do, it was quite nice. And I just managed to have a good day. Don't mention the bowling figures though. Again.
Oh, really?
I think somehow I got through maybe 20 overs. I think.
Yeah, you got 3 for 104 in 20.
Yeah, so it wasn't too bad. 5 and over at Taunton, you take it back then. But,
no, that's wrong. It's 3 for 104.
I didn't know I got 3 for. I don't know what happened there. Was that 9-10 Jack? Was it? Or?
No, I don't think so. No, I've lost track actually. You got M. Burns, that Michael Burns.
Oh yeah, it's good. Yeah,
Keith Parsons and Ian Blackwell. So
I'll take that.
Yeah, very good. So how did those early sort of years go then? Really, you're part of a very strong side. I think, if I remember correctly, I should look this up. But Surrey won the title in 2002, didn't they?
Yeah.
So success for the first few years for you and the club.
Yes. Yeah. So it was for me. My first full sort of season. I made some one-day appearances in 2001, sorry, and then 2002 was my sort of first class debut. And at the end of that year, I had quite a decent time of it in the 4-day format. And don't get me wrong, I did okay in one-day stuff as well, but it wasn't really sort of the season. If I had to say, right, how's your season gone? It would be really pleased with the 4-day stuff. I think I scored something like 700 odd runs at 50 odd or something. So for me, first season in about 9 matches, I think it was. I was quite happy. Bowling, didn't really bowl a lot, so that wasn't really in the sort of frame really. But then the one day stuff, got a couple of 50s. I think I got a 98 not out on TV up at Derby in the one day stuff as well. And then I found myself on the ICC Champions Trophy tour with England the end of that summer, which was a little bit of a shock, don't get me wrong, but I think it was more. So I've gone into a one day tournament for England when I was probably more of a sort of 4-day player. But I think they had a couple of injuries. I think Craig White maybe got injured. I don't think Freddie was on that trip either through injury. And it was like, this young lad's obviously done well at the time. I think it was a couple of weeks before the tour was about to leave, and I got sort of 98 not out on the TV, as I said, on Sky Sports, and then got picked. And it was, looking back, everyone says it's probably too early to be picked, but you're not going to call up David Graveney and Duncan Fletcher and say, I'm okay on this occasion, pick me next time.
Yeah, well, so I was looking at your profile on a website and it said promoted too early. So you've kind of ticked that point off now, but it's quite topical at the moment with Jacob Bethell playing for England, number 3, yet to score a professional century. There's other people down the years like Brian Close, Mike Gatting, who have been blooded very early, stroke too early. I mean, so as you say, you're not going to turn it down, but do you look back and think that that was a bit too early for me?
It definitely was. 9 first-class matches. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I alluded to it. It went quite well. But you're always learning the game and trying to know your game. But I didn't really know my game. I was still very, very young. Unfortunately, at that age, I was probably still a bit immature at that age. Where some of the players you look now, like I look at like an Ollie Pope who's come in, and Joe Root when they were younger and stuff. They're very mature cricketers and people, and unfortunately that wasn't me. And it was that sort of scenario of going into it. It was just, I needed to know my game a little bit more, but also I suppose it's a case of the environment you go into as well. I think you look at young players now going into an environment with Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum. It is just go and relax, play cricket, no expectations. That's how it comes across to me. I don't know if that's the case, but it does look to me that it's just go and play your cricket. If that's how you want to play and this is what you want to do, there's no expectations. No one's going to be, wagging the finger when you come in if you get out, or kicking a cup of coffee at you and that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that was the scenario when I was picked for England, but it wasn't always that sort of dressing room where you feel you could be yourself. You always sort of sometimes tread on eggshells, which is I don't think the case for young players now.
Well, you talk about Bazball, and I mean, yes, McCullum has done wonders, sort of giving everybody the confidence and losing all that anxiety. But the results were amazing to start with. They've sort of levelled off a bit now, haven't they? But do you think it's levelled off a bit? Do you think that effect is sort of not quite doing it now? But
I think it's a combination of surfaces that they've been faced with and different attacks they're coming up against, and you look at Pakistan, for example. Obviously, a lot of spin was featuring there, and it was quite difficult circumstances. For me, don't get me wrong, there's been some incredible, outrageous shots along the way. I suppose if you look at Joe Root when he's reverse sweeping seamers for 6, and obviously that's a little bit out there in Test cricket. You don't see it very often, but as of yet, I can't remember the time that he has failed doing that. So that obviously helps, and I suppose it's no different to a cover drive or a pull shot and stuff like that. If you're practicing it, which I imagine they all are. But I think that the term, they call it Bazball, and I think I'm pretty sure to say that he doesn't actually like that term, Brendan McCullum, the Bazball. I think he's just trying to give them freedom and to play their way, and to say, do you know what? If you're in doubt, take a positive option. Now, I suppose that with it, sometimes that positive option could go one or two ways and be a little bit too positive. But sometimes I think a lot of the time you can look at the structure of the batting lineup and how they play is, you know what, I'm going to take on an option that's in my favour, and sort of take out the risk side of it. But when you're watching on TV, you feel like there's load of risk to these shots. But these guys will be practicing hard and making sure they've got it covered. As I said, it's no different to trying to sweep a seamer or a pull shot and stuff like that. You know, if someone takes on a pull shot and top edges it and gets it slightly wrong, they get caught. Everyone says what you're doing, but if they nail it in front of square for 4, it's well executed and it's fine. So I think it's just evolved a little bit more with the shots that are being played, particularly in Test cricket.
You perhaps can confirm something to me. I'm going back to new captaincy challenge next year. Going to captain Beddington Cricket Club fifths.
Okay.
So yeah, and was there a story about Adam Hollyoake that he got everybody in the room? It might have been just before your time, and everybody had to say what they didn't like about somebody. Is that right? Have you heard that one?
I haven't heard that one. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether to use that at Beddington next summer, but it sort of gets rid of all the negative vibes or something. So yeah. Anyway,
obviously, did that work then? Did it?
Well, apparently, yeah. I've read that. It was amazing. Everybody had their differences out early doors and then moved on. But yeah, no, I think it was just before your time. Let's look at the international stage then. So in 2003. You were called up for the England Test team to play in Bangladesh, weren't you?
Yeah. So 2 tests.
Yeah. So tell me what that was like. Was it daunting being on the plane with the England team? And
I think it was easier because I've had that 2002 end of the season in September to October was the Champions Trophy. So I'd already had that experience of being on an England tour. And then after that season in 2003, we picked together. I don't actually know what I did in 2003 to obviously warrant being picked. But again, it might have been potential. I don't know. But then, did okay, I suppose. I always look at it and say 2 tests in Bangladesh. I think I averaged 32 with a bat and 15 with a ball. So I'm quite happy to have that as my test stats. Would have loved a few more games, but it was easy to settle in because most of the players I've been on tour with anyway in that 2002 Champions Trophy squad.
And I suppose you were used to playing with Test cricketers, weren't you? Alex Stewart, Graham Thorpe. So you were used to playing with stars, weren't you? Really? So yeah. Yeah.
So I think on that tour there was 4P. Chris Reed, I think, might have been the keeper with Geraint Jones, Nasser Hussain, Michael Vaughan, Marcus Jaskovic, Mark Butcher.
Yep.
I think Steve Harmison was there, Ashley Giles. So
in those days, England took 2 specialist wicketkeepers on tour, didn't they? So
yeah.
They used to call somebody up in an emergency. So how did you find it? Had you been to Bangladesh before? Or
I hadn't. No, it's the first time.
I was on that tour. It was people were very nice, weren't they? Very friendly.
Yeah, very friendly. So we were in Dhaka to start with, and then Chittagong, I think it was, for the second test. And for me it was, I went on, as I said before, on that 2002, India tour to the Champions Trophy, so those sort of conditions, but it was one-day cricket. But then obviously to learn your trade and new conditions to deal with it in Bangladesh, and obviously the heat and stuff like that, it was quite an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've interviewed you before, and we've talked about Flintoff and how possibly it was suggested that you and Flintoff couldn't be in the same side together, but you disagree with that, don't you? And there's no reason why you can't have 2 seam bowling all-rounders in the same side, can you?
No, exactly that. Freddie, I think many years ago, said it himself. He didn't understand why we both couldn't feature in the same side. I suppose if you look now, you're looking at the sort of Ben Stokes and a Chris Wokes or a Sam Curran and stuff. So they're both in the same side. One could be sort of that genuine all-rounder, and then one could, well, in fairness, I'm sorry, I think Chris Wokes is a genuine all-rounder, but you can still have two players in there that can cover the batting and the bowling. But yeah, it wasn't really the sort of case back then. It was had to be. It was a little bit different. But
did Alex Stewart say you should have won 50 Test caps or something, didn't he?
Yeah, he always said I should have played 75 Tests and 150 ODIs. Yeah,
75.
So, yeah, he's a few off.
Well, let's talk about your ODI career. Then you played 20 ODIs, and you got a few wickets, didn't you? But it was tricky, wasn't it? In and out of the side again. Flintoff, I suppose, was there. Tell me about that. I mean, you quite a lot of matches in England, didn't you? You played.
Yeah, I think for me the difficult thing was, you mentioned it was just I was in and out. During a course of, was it 2003 to 2006, was my 20 ODIs, but I think I only batted 13 times in those 20 ODIs.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I batted in 5 or 6 different places. So I never really, in that sort of 13 innings, I never really had an opportunity to say, right, do you know what, you're batting 6, try and make that role yours. You're going to be first change bowler. Sometimes I bowl, sometimes I wouldn't. So it was difficult, but at the end of the day, I was representing my country, which is everything I always tried to set out to do. Do I feel like I got a fair crack of the whip? I probably can say now, no, I don't. But at the same point, at least I can say that I managed to put on the jersey and represent my country a couple of times. So, I can look back fondly.
Definitely. We mustn't forget the questions. There's a lot of questions sort of about you later in your career and so on. But let's bring in a question here from Mark. Don't know his surname, I'm afraid. Who says, who was the best player you ever played with and which player had the most potential?
Best player I've ever played with was Kevin Peterson, hands down. Just incredible. I remember being on a tour in 2006 India Champions Trophy and just watching him bat and the way he went about his practice. Just phenomenal cricketer, really phenomenal cricketer. And just everyone looks at him and thinks, natural talent and ability, but he worked incredibly hard as well. Fantastic cricketer. Most potential. Hard to say, that one. Hard to say. Played with so many cricketers over the years that have bags of talent and ability. I'll tell you what, who probably should have maybe done more in his career. Scott Newman was a fantastic cricketer. Fantastic cricketer. I think, again, he was a little bit misunderstood sometimes. But he was, as an opening batter goes, he played pace so well. Really well. And obviously he went from Surrey, and then I think he was at Notts for a bit, then Middlesex and Kent, and it just sort of didn't really work out for him very well. But he was someone who, in my eyes, should have been at Surrey and stayed at Surrey all the way through, because he was, a serious cricketer. I think I remember one time, before he had to wear the helmets, Alan Butcher was our second team coach, and he was, "You got to wear a helmet. This is professional cricket now. You got to wear a helmet." Scott Newman's like, "Really? I've not been used to wearing a helmet at all. Like, I don't operate that way." He's like, "You have to wear a helmet. It's professional cricket. This is what we do." So he's opening the batting, a couple of balls down at Sussex, didn't like it. He's called 12 man on, and they've taken off the helmet. And I think it's actually Billy Taylor was bowling. Now, Billy Taylor, don't get me wrong, he had a little bit of pace, but he wasn't ridiculously quick, but he wasn't slow either. And he sort of took offence to this from Scott Newman and run in and started bouncing him. And Scott just kept on pulling him out of the ground for like 6. Incredible player of pace bowling. Bags of potential, as I said. Had a good career, but I think looking back, he probably could have done a lot more. I think he went on an academy tour with England as well.
He was with the Rod Masters Academy. Yeah.
So I think he could have done a bit more. Unfortunately, didn't work out.
Just back on your England career, then Michael Vaughan was captain, and as you say, I think you said you played with Treyers and James Anderson. So, I mean, what was Vaughan like as a captain? Vaughany?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Really good. He was different to Adam Hollyoake in the sense that he was just very calm the way he spoke about stuff. Not that Smokey was like a bull in a china shop, but he was, we're going to do this and do that, where Vaughany was just very calm. And he was, again, he was someone that, for me, going into that England dressing room, to have him as captain and how sort of he went about his captaincy, very knowledgeable of the game as well. Tactically, he was fantastic, and to watch how he went about his business was very good. And that was ideal for me as well, going into that setup, that you had someone like him as captain, who again was just made sure that everyone was happy with what was going on, and kept it as a smooth ship.
And Jimmy, did you marvel at Jimmy's swing skills?
Yeah. Well, the skills he had, it was just a case of how he worked hard on developing his game, and it's still to that point from now when he finished in the summer. He was always trying to get better in his game. As I said before, he had pace as well, so he would swing it at pace. You're looking at probably 90 miles an hour. I always remember we joked around about a delivery where he bowled, I think it was in the World Cup. I want to say it was either against Pakistan. I think it's Pakistan, where he bowled this, I think it was about 90 mile an hour way swinging Yorker. And he did something like similar to this with like a Q&A and a podcast. And he always goes back and says, the Yorker, that was one of his favourite balls that he sort of bowled back then. But yeah, just amazing skills. And again, someone who he had that sort of trouble, I want to say around about 2005, where he tried to sort of remodel his action a little bit. And he realised, do you know what? This is what got me playing. This is what got me playing Test cricket. This is what got me playing in the World Cup. My action might have been that everyone sort of said he looked down and his foot sort of spayed out a little bit, but it was something where he just went, that's what I am and who I am, and he went back to it and he just tied it up a little bit rather than trying to make wholesale changes. I think he tried to make wholesale changes and he ended up getting a stressy at the back, and then he went back to what he knew and what's him, and the rest, as we know, is very much history, and he's fantastic.
It was Troy Cooley, the bowling coach, who was focused a lot on counter-rotation injuries. So he was the one who tried to persuade Jimmy to change his action, and it didn't really work for him. So as you say, you went back. And actually, you and Jimmy, I mean, if in terms of longevity, you carried on playing both, didn't you, into your 40s? I think I'm right in saying, yeah. So yeah. So you've got well-built bodies, you two. Really, long careers, yeah.
He has. I've just been lucky, I think.
What about Duncan Fletcher as a coach? I mean, he's got, I don't know, a very good coach. I mean, incredible cricket brain. Came across a little bit of a cold fish, to be honest, if from the media perspective. But what was he like to play for?
I think Fletcher, for me, he was a good coach. Don't get me wrong, very good, but it was always a case of you sort of never knew where you stood with Fletch, which I think that's what he wanted. But I sort of struggled with that because, some days he felt like it's quite cold towards you. And other days he'd be, how you, Clarke, you're good, and everything's very pally. And you're like, okay. And then you try and pick that up the next day and then it just blank you again. So you sort of didn't know where you stood. But I think that's what he enjoyed and liked. But as a coach, he was very good. He had his certain methods and ways that he believed worked in coaching. But for me, it was something that I changed my game a little bit under that regime, and I don't think it really worked for me. By changing my game, I then was out the side because it didn't work for me. Where, potentially we just spoke about Jimmy, who went back to what he knew. I maybe should have done that a little bit sooner and trusted what I had and stuck with it. But I changed a little bit too much in the sort of quest to get better and to have a really long international career, and it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, it's a shame. So at 25, you were dropped by England for the last time, unfortunately. And a bit like James Foster did play some T20s, but he came in early as well, didn't he? And it ended early. But so back to Surrey. Well, this is a question from Tom Maslona, and he says Mark Ramprakash wrote a diary of the season Surrey were relegated in 2005. How had the club changed from that time to when he returned from Warwickshire?
Oh, relegated. I think looking for when I was at Warwickshire, looking in from afar and stuff like that, I think Surrey went away from what Surrey has always been. You know, you look at the likes of Thorpe, Stewart, Butcher, Bicknell, Hollyoake, Alistair Brown, Tudor, all these guys, they come through the sort of Surrey youth system. Myself, Tim Murtagh, Michael Carberry, Scott Newman we spoke about, your Jay Dernbanks and stuff come through the Surrey youth system. And I think Surrey went away from it a little bit during that period. And I think this is credit to Alex Stewart when he came into that role. He said, we need to get back to getting our players and our youngsters from the Surrey youth system coming through and playing for the county. And that's when you then see the likes of Curran brothers, Jamie Smith, you got Jason Roy, Rory Burns, Ryan Patel, all these sort of guys that are coming through the youth system, Ollie Pope. And I think if you've got the majority of the core of understanding what the county is about and what it means to wear the three feathers, I think that's, you know, a recipe for success. And then with that, you bring in your good players along the way. So, you know, Surrey doing 3 in a row, they've got their core of their Surrey youth players coming through the system. But then if you add, you know, Ben Folkes, who obviously come from Essex, but he very much brought into that Surrey ethos from early on. And then you chuck in a Dan Worrell, a Roach, a couple other players that are very, very good just to finish off that sort of team and squad to win games of cricket.
How good is Dan Worrell? He's good.
Very good.
He might play for England, might he? Do you think possibly next year?
Well, again, if you look at it, fantastic bowler, just pace, skills, incredible. He's someone who I could just sit and watch bowl for a whole day. And I'm not much of a cricket watcher, but to watch him bowl, it is fantastic.
It's tough for him to go to Australia, wouldn't it? And you know where he's from, but well, we'll see. So 2007, unfortunately, you were dropped by Surrey, and then you joined Derbyshire, didn't you?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I potentially put the record straight here as well. So I wasn't in 2007. Unfortunately, I got an illness, so we went on tour to India, and I come back and I got a bit of an illness, and it was something to do with my blood cells and stuff. I won't bore you too much with the details, but I was literally just wiped out, and I was still trying to play, but I was like trying to run in a bowl, and I was just sweating after like 1 or 2 overs. I had no energy. Spoke to the phys about it, got it all sorted, and it's sort of. I don't think at the time Surrey believed that was the case, because I was in the last year of my contract. I think they thought I was looking for a move anyway, and unfortunately, it sort of went a little bit sour. And then they tried to make me take a pay cut in my wages. The year before, I think I got 1,000 runs and was in 2006 and was back in the England fold, so to speak, playing sort of my last one-dayers in 2006. So the year before I'd done really well, but it just didn't work out for me that next year. And I said, okay, I'm going to go. And they said, okay. And it's sort of a bit of a, what's the word, stalemate. And I ended up moving on.
Well, a couple of readers' questions come in here then. So David S says, how much of a culture shock was it moving from Surrey to Derbyshire? And what were the main differences in the way the 3 counties you played for operated off the field?
So for me at the time, it was probably the right time to leave Surrey. Now, don't get me wrong, I wanted to be a one county player. As I said at the very start, this was the county that I started at, Surrey under nines. So I played all through the youth system, but at the time, I think it was a good opportunity for me to leave. I didn't want to leave, but it was sort of forced that way. But in the end, I think it actually modelled me and made me the player I was towards the end of my career. It didn't work out at Derby, unfortunately. I was only there, I think, for about 8 months, and then went to Warwickshire. And Warwickshire was the place where they sort of really grabbed me and said, right, what cricketer do you want to be? And this is how we're going to make you that cricketer. And Graham Welsh, who was bowling coach at the time, Jim Troughton was captain, and Ashley Giles was coach. And all three of those I have so much respect for and can thank them so much, because they actually turned my career around. And I think that helped me, as I said, become the player I was. Ashley Giles turned around and said, right, you need to get your batting done. You know, I said earlier on about the question with the all-rounder. So I needed to actually work out my time management and to make sure that I was doing what I needed to do. So I'd get there 8:30 in the morning. I'd go bowl for half an hour with Pop Welsh. I'd then go and get my batting done with Gilo. I'd then come over and make sure I've got my slip fielding done, and then I can kick back. I've ticked all the boxes. I've done what I need to do, and that was everyday clockwork. I trained very hard. Gilo would probably say I could have trained harder, but I trained harder than I've ever trained. So I was making sure that I was looking after myself, and that sort of was evidence in my cricket that, you know, I never missed any cricket. I was always on the park.
Well, let's not do, so we mustn't do Derbyshire fans a disservice. But we've got another question on Derbyshire from Tom. He says, "Hi, Rikki. I'm quite a new cricket fan, but something struck me reading your Wikipedia page," which, assuming is true, it's not always true, is it? He said, "You were on the path to becoming Surrey captain, but moved to Derbyshire to take a captain's role. Later that season, it says you ended up dropping yourself. There's probably many times in sporting history a captain should have dropped themselves. Harry Kane springs to mind. That was controversial. You're a Spurs fan, aren't you?"
I am a Spurs fan.
Yeah. You actually followed through with it. Did captaincy just not agree with you, or was there more to it than that?
So, quickly, so I was vice captain at Surrey in 2007, and obviously, as I said before, it didn't really work out there with certain things, and moved on. The original, so I'd actually agreed to sign for Warwickshire, and it was Darren Maddy was captain of Warwickshire, Mark Breakbatch was the coach, and then we'd agreed everything. I was moving to Warwickshire, just had to go and sign the contract. Then Mark Breakbatch actually got sacked, unfortunately for him, and then I didn't really hear anything. Warwickshire was still waiting to see who they were going to bring in as coach. In the end, it turned out to be Ashley Giles. I had a meeting with John Morris at Derbyshire, and it was sort of it was a meeting where it was going to be, how I saw it was, John Morris was very similar to a Keith Medlicott, and I wanted to try and be that Adam Hollioake type captain, and sort of like just sort of lead from the front. And from that meeting, unfortunately, it didn't really sort of materialise that was going to be the case. I thought that was going to be the case. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And then it come to a situation where I didn't actually warrant a place in the side. And I'd always said to the players that the situation was, if you don't warrant a place in the side, doesn't matter who you are, you will not play. And it'd gone on too long where I just was out of form. I don't think captaincy didn't agree with me. I actually quite liked it. I had a lot of success at Surrey when I was vice captain and stepped into that captaincy role. We'd had games that had done well, and I'd done well as well and stuff. So I don't think it was that factor. But John Morris didn't agree with my decision and said, "You can't drop yourself," and I'm not having it. I was like, "Well, I am," and unfortunately, we clashed, and everything that's sort of been promised wasn't the case. And I said, "Look, I think it's best you release me from the contract and let me go." I bought a house in Derby, so I was very much in, and unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. But at the time as well, Warwickshire had been on the phone saying, we want you to sign for us. Is it still possible? But I'd already promised Derby that once I got off holiday from Portugal, I was going to sign for them. And I had loads of phone calls saying, look, just speak to Warwickshire. I think Najahi, Jason Ratcliffe, a few other players, like, just hear Warwickshire out. It'll be a great place for you. And yeah, unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. I was true to my word, went to Derbyshire. It didn't work out, which is disappointing. As I said, I was fully invested, and the family was fully invested in Derbyshire. And then Derbyshire agreed to release me from the contract, and then went to Warwickshire.
On the same subject then of captaincy, Jill Smith asks, you know a bit about the pressure of captaincy. Do you think Ben Stokes is suffering under the weight of it? The England captaincy in recent years seems to have weighed heavily eventually on Cook, Root, and now perhaps Stokes. Surely he'd be better off concentrating on batting, bowling and fielding.
Well, I think it's always a case that captaincy does weigh on every captain's shoulders. And I think you could look at the great captains, it still weighs on their shoulders. Does it affect their performance? Only those players can say. But there's still been many captains as well that have been captains for many years and performed quite well. I think it definitely is something that is a weight off the shoulders. Because you're not only taking the pressures onto your shoulders for your game and the decisions that are made, but you also got to think about your team as well. I don't know. I think that he in Ben Stokes is a very strong character, and I think sometimes that brings the best out of him. I think, remember, he's only just come back from an injury as well, so that could be a factor as well, that he's still trying to get back into a rhythm of playing cricket, having a bit of an injury. Yeah.
Another question on similar territory, Ben Stokes. Nathan asks, you were a bit of a classical rounder with a skill set similar to Ben Stokes, if that's okay to say. I'm sure it is okay to say, Nathan, isn't it? You don't mind that. But you didn't manage to break through in the same way. Do you wish you'd focused on one skill predominantly, or was there a make or break moment?
I think I became probably a better cricketer probably too late. For me, it was always early start of my career. I was more of a batter, and bowling, as I said, was sort of like a strike rate sort of bowler. In fairness, don't know if I should say this or not, but I'm going to. I actually got told to leave Surrey a lot earlier than I did, in a quest to go and bowl more overs, which would actually help my England credentials. Because there was a scenario where, for example, I was playing for England and bowling probably 8, 9, 10 overs in an ODI. I would then go and play for Surrey a month later after that series had finished, and I wouldn't bowl at all. And I was like sort of that number 4 batter, sometimes 5 batter. So, the championship would hardly bowl at all. Go on a test tour and bowl more overs, and so it was always a case that it was sort of said to me that I needed to potentially leave Surrey in a quest to bowl more overs. But I didn't do it.
Interesting. Well, you enjoyed your time at Warwickshire, yeah, but then opportunity came to go back to Surrey, and actually you were in a swap deal. I didn't hear in cricket, do you? Get them in football, but swap deal with Dominic Sibley. Do you laugh about that with him?
Everyone always says there's a swap deal, but he'd already agreed that he was going to Warwickshire, and I already agreed that I was going to Surrey. And it was actually a case, I think the gaffer had actually asked Ashley Giles, "Can we have Rick early?" And he was like, "No, we still need him." Then I think Dom had decided that Warwickshire was the place for him. And then they went, "Okay, well, let's do it, and we'll just swap." So it made out like it was a massive sort of swap deal. I didn't get any signing on fee. Jim White was like,
1.1 million and
transfer day, undisclosed fee.
But anyway, I mean, so this is a really happy phase of your career, isn't it? It was a great success. You going back to the Ray, wasn't it? And they won the title again in 2018. Presumably very happy years. I mean, you were a real force, weren't you, in those last few years?
Yeah, it was. It was, for me, as I said earlier on, I didn't want to leave Surrey. Surrey's always been sort of my county. I had 9 great years at Warwickshire, and that almost felt like my county as well. How welcoming everyone was and how I fitted in, and leaving Warwickshire was really tough as well. But, from the age of 9, Surrey, and going back and knowing that, my playing days were going to finish there, was very nice and very fitting.
No, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, even and then there's carried on, hasn't it? Their dominance really. And there's a question here from Morgan who says, "Is there a secret behind Surrey's current dominance, or is it staring us straight in the face? Just the unbelievable depth and resource," he puts in brackets.
I think that is the case. Don't get me wrong; they've got some fantastic cricketers, but again, they do play the younger guys. You're looking at, Ryan Patel is getting a good run. You've had the likes of Conor McCurr, I think, played a few times last year as well, and younger players coming through, which is always important. But I think it's the hunger they have as well, as a squad, as a county, to try and make sure that they're getting better. They know that other counties are going to be gunning for them, and they need to keep improving and keep working hard. We spoke about captains as well, but Rory Burns is pivotal to that as a captain. Again, very knowledgeable, very calm, speaks well, has the respect of his players. And then with that, you then have the coach, Gareth Batty, who's he has his own way, don't get me wrong, but he's always having that sort of mould of a Brendan McCullum, and says, go out and play your way and, have a bit of freedom. I'm going to treat you like adults, and you crack on and go for it. It's your career and what you feel is the best way to do it. I'm going to back you 100%, and that's where you get the best out of your players. The batter's going out thinking, I can't do this or do that in fear of getting out, or the situation, or not bowling that delivery, because you just have to make sure that you give those players that rein to say, go out and be you. And I think you're seeing that rewards in their cricket.
Yeah, we had a series in the Cricketer magazine, Best County Cricket Captains, and I think Nick Friend has just written a piece about Rory Burns for our website. So updating that series, and the whole series has gone on the website. So that is worth checking out. Now, we've had lots of questions about your batting, bowling, but of course you were also a magnificent fielder. But hands like buckets, is that what they say? Was that what they said about you?
They're too big on the screen. I don't
know. Yeah. So there's a fair few questions about catching. I mean, I'll just give you a little stat. You apparently took 7 catches in Liverpool, Aigburth, in an innings in 2017. Yeah. 7 catches, and that's amazing, isn't it? I bet there was a lot of laughter about that. Just the ball just followed you around, did it?
Yeah, I think it equalled the world record, I think, for catches taken by an outfielder in an innings.
Was it 7-7, or did you drop any?
No, they dropped any. No, I think. Yeah, so it was a good day. I think there was a couple in the slips, and then there was one where I can't remember what player it was for Lancashire, but went for a sweep and skied it, and I was at leg slip, and I sort of run round and got under it there. But I think most of them were in the slip and pretty much straight in, which was quite nice.
Well, here's a question from one of our readers, Stacey Owens. And she says, you were a renowned slip catcher during your career. How did you prepare for balls coming at you at 90 miles an hour with less than a moment's notice? Your fingers must be all over the place, but it feels like a real skill to be a consistent catcher in that position. We saw a brilliant relay catch recently in the Australia-India game. But anyway, so yeah, what was your secret, really?
Practice, hard work. I was always one of those cricketers that just loved fielding as well. I think that's important, that you have to enjoy fielding to want to be out there and do it. I was always someone at backward points. I was always used to, the cut shots or the square drives coming quite quick at you, and having to dive on it and put your body on the line. And then as my sort of career went on a little bit more, I found myself in the slips, and it was just basically a case of practice. I'll tell you what did help me towards the end of my career is when the sort of catching gloves came about. So I could actually practice and catch more balls, knowing that I wasn't sort of bruising my palms and stuff, and getting lots of sort of sting and bruises on the hands. So that allowed me to catch more.
Right. So that helped you get your hands. That helped you get your hands in the right position.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the time, sometimes again, like if you got little bruises across the palm a little bit, you'd always try and then catch the next one, making sure it wasn't hitting that bruise. Because if you hit that bruise, it was there for the whole summer. It wasn't like gone in a week. Every time you caught a ball, it was there. So by getting the catching mitts, it just had a lot of padding around that area. And that allowed me to then train a lot more and get the volume of catches that I needed in. But yeah, it was something that I'd always sort of enjoyed doing, and tried to make it a specialist position. You see specialist positions like short leg, silly point, backward point. I just wanted to make sure that I was in a position where the ball's coming to me and I could make a difference.
Okay, well, Rohan, so your county career came to an end, a long, illustrious career. And then Rohan asks, how was the transition from being a professional athlete to now being head of cricket at King's Edward's, Whitley?
Very easy. I think it was, for me, retiring from the professional game, a lot of people ask, do you miss it and stuff? And actually, I don't, which is fantastic, because it's allowed me to understand that the decision I made to retire was the right decision. I didn't want to hang on for too long, but I had a fantastic job to go into. And for me now, coaching the boys and girls, trying to push them to be better is something that I just love doing. Trying to make sure that I can make them the best they can be and develop them, but also try and get them down that sort of county route as well, and try and see them flourish. Late nights, I don't mind it, but to see the boys and girls getting what they need to perform and to make the school better is something that we try and do here and push with the school.
Nice. And Gary House asks, are you teaching the kids to play baseball style, or is it all a fad?
So a lot of the time it's making sure they get their techniques correct and play what would be deemed normal traditional cricket, making sure they've got a decent defence, playing your cover drives and your normal sort of basic shots. But we also try and make sure that because of the format sometimes we play, they're having a little bit of fun and trying those scoops and reverse sweeps and trying to develop their game as well. So we cover a whole sort of package of technical work. Again, all similar with the ball as well, that we try and make sure that they're focusing on variations and Yorkers and stop deliveries. So we try and cover it all really. So we make sure the sessions are different, but fundamentally they need that sort of core, as they say, of normal cricket.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that you do a lot of work with catching, don't you, with the girls as well, with the slip cradle and things.
Yeah, so we get the bowling machine out and we angle it. So we work on flat catching, high catching, diving catches. We try and cover all bases to make sure that the sessions are different to keep the boys and girls engaged. But at the same point, you're having a lot of fun with it as well. So we're seeing a real sort of push now of our cricket that is very pleasing for me as the head of cricket, but also for the school as well.
A couple of quick questions then. From Nick, are you worried that the IPL replacement player rule may kill the all-rounder?
Potentially, but I think a lot of the time it allows you to sometimes play a little bit few more all-rounders. I think at times we had a situation. I played in a Legends League recently where there was like a super sub, and it allowed you to get that extra sort of specialist player in and play your all-rounders more, because you knew you were covering the bases. But then if it wasn't going so well with the bat, you could get that specialist batter in. And if you needed, say, a spinner and something, you could then take a batter out because you knew you had those all-rounders. But potentially be all right for all rounders.
Bryony asks, do you regret missing the T20 gravy train?
A little bit. I think there was a time where I potentially could have been in it a little bit as well, but I was a bit too much of a 4-day sort of purist. I love 4-day cricket, and I just felt, not that I potentially would have been picked up in the IPL, but I always felt that, you know, I was employed to do a job for a county, and I felt it would be wrong of me to go away for 6 weeks and do that. And then the winter months, it was always a case of, you know, I wanted my time off a little bit and spend it with family rather than traveling around. But, you know, hindsight, potentially I would have loved to play in a couple of T20 leagues and for different franchises, but
you say you are playing in the Masters now, and you still feel you're up for playing. You played in the club game a couple of years ago, didn't you? And did rather well, didn't you?
Yeah, that got a little bit of traction, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. What was it, 234 not out or something?
229. Yeah,
right.
I think I upset a few people on that occasion and that day. But in fairness, I've been playing since. I played 7 or 8 games this summer, and no one was bothered by it, and it was fine. It's just that one game that seemed to get. Yeah.
Is that for the same club, or is it?
Yeah. Still at Shrewton. We've got a fantastic new ground now, and we're trying to do the best we can to get new members coming down and playing, and really sort of build that club, because it's important for club cricket to stay alive, really, and to keep flourishing. Because unfortunately, I've seen a few clubs that have had to fold because they just don't have the players, and those clubs that are getting those sort of 5th, 6th, 7th team out, you know, they take all the players, and the smaller ones are struggling. It's quite difficult to go out in the sticks where we are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, last couple. So now then, we've got Stuart, and he says, I'd like to ask Rikki how he felt the quality and intensity of English domestic cricket changed from when he started his career to when he retired, and when would he have experienced it at its strongest?
I think at the strongest, it was pretty much when I first started, just because it was the 2 overseas. A lot of the time you had a lot of the England players were around as well. So you're always up against it, really. From that factor, you had 2 good quality overseas players. I'm not saying that's not the case now, but for me, we played against Warwickshire, and you had Sean Pollock running in it. So as a youngster, that's always going to be a test. But I think the volume of cricket now internationally, I don't think it always allows for those players to play as much, because they need to rest as well. I suppose it would be a scenario where batters would be easier, a case of it for batters to come and play more, but bowlers, you obviously struggle a little bit because they need to rest up. But from my point of view, I think it was very, very strong in my early days. We played a game early on, I think it was 2003, and we had a scenario where Andrew Flintoff, Glenn Chappell, I think it was Jimmy, Peter Martin, was like a seam attack. That's a proper attack. With I think it was a Gary Keedy as your spinner.
Yeah,
and Stuart Law was a batter, and Neil Fairbrother, and it just felt like it was really, really good competitive cricket. I think sometimes it's gone away a little bit because I think younger players are getting more opportunity, and I don't think that's wrong. But at the same point, your good seasoned pros back then, it was tough. Where trying to blood those youngsters a little bit. I think sometimes the counties get financed as well if they play some younger players. So that's obviously a bit of a worrying factor. I'm more of a case of, if you're good enough, doesn't matter about your age. If you're old or young, you play. And I think that keeps the standard very strong.
Okay, Rikki, thanks for. So you and also do you do your coaching clinic now, or clinics, or a coaching school, or in the holidays, is it, or do you want to?
Yeah. So runs out of school. So I've got my own cricket academy.
Academy?
Yeah, it's a really well named. It's the Rikki Clarke Cricket Academy. So
Yeah,
it took a long time to think of that one. Yeah, so that runs out of school. We do holiday camps during the half term, summer holidays, and then we also run an elite academy program, which is coming up to. We've got 2 weeks left of this current one before Christmas, and then we have another 10 weeks after Christmas in the new year, and then the winter program will start for the pupils at school as well, which will be during the evenings from January through to March. And then we break up for that period over Easter, and then we're back in ready for the season.
So you're a busy man, aren't you?
Very busy, yeah,
Brilliant.
very busy. But as I said, it's very rewarding that I can give back to the younger boys and girls a little bit of experience that I've got, and just to see that they want to learn and get better, and then actually to see them get better. We've had a couple of players that had slight disappointment from not making county setups, worked on their game, and now they're doing really well at county setups, and that's important for us as well, to make sure that they're getting what they need and to make them better, develop, and most importantly have fun.
Nice. Well, I think we've survived the first live Q&A of the cricketer. I don't think we've slandered anybody, and I don't think we swore anybody. So. And also, you've been very brave, because you're in a room that's apparently haunted, aren't you?
Potentially, yeah. It's one of those schools that has been here since 1553. We've been here, so you obviously get a few funny noises and happenings. I haven't seen any glasses move on their own yet, or picture frames fall off. So,
do you live on site, or do you live in the school?
Yeah, so I'm on site. I have a flat on site, and then get home at the weekends. Yeah, so.
So also, you're going to go for dinner now? Rice pudding and.
I don't know what I've got. It'll probably be a microwavable meal that would take 2.5 minutes. Nothing too fancy.
All right. Well, it's great talking to you, Rikki. Thanks so much for talking for so long. We've gone well over the hour, so great stuff. Brilliant.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Huw.
Thanks, Rikki. Cheers.